So when you're buying a house, almost all the time, not always, but most of the time, you're going to need to know what the value is of that property. Lenders, like our friends at Geneva Financial, they are going to always want an appraisal of almost every transaction they do. Is that to tell you the value of the property? No. Appraisers cannot tell you the value of the property. They tell you the value of the lien for the benefit of the lender. The value of a property is always, always, always determined by what a willing seller will sell for and a willing buyer will pay. Now, they may come up to the idea that, especially in a market like this, that the buyer's willing to pay $50,000 more than the property value because they want to win the bid. They want to get that property. That doesn't mean that the lender is in the same boat. They want to talk to an independent appraiser and get their valuation based on very, very regulated and regimented standards. We're going to learn about that today. We've got Brandon Hargreaves with us today, Home Built Real Estate Solutions. How long have you been doing appraising, Brandon?
20 years now.
20 years.
Yes, and randomly enough, we know each other. We met, we worked in the same office. I leased an office
long time ago.
We figured it out, it was about 11 years ago. And your name popped back up, and I was like, Ron, that sounds familiar. Then I saw your picture, and I was like, yep, that's definitely him.
So you were at the post office, and you saw my picture on the post office wall.
That's why, yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
A lot of people see my picture on the post office. Okay, I know there's some young people that don't know what that means. There is a place called post offices. That's where the mail goes through. And the FBI puts their most wanted on the wall. I got to put that in there because there are some folks that.
That's the
okay.
Yeah.
So appraisals. You've always been doing appraisals.
Yes, I've been in the appraisal industry for the past 20 years. I also am a licensed real estate agent with eXp Realty, and I am an investor as well. So what I'm trying to help out with is the value part of this process, right? And how it relates to lenders, agents, everybody in the puzzle. And if we have a simplistic idea on what my piece of that puzzle, the appraiser piece of that puzzle does, and how to help navigate through the process, it saves a lot of time and headache. And that's what I've learned through the years, as far as what lenders have to go through, what agents have to go through, based off of maybe a lack of communication with that appraiser, because for so long, everyone's been scared to talk to each other in that regard, because they try to put a boundary between who talks to who.
Yeah, we don't want to get into that, do we, Mr. Cuomo? With
Exactly.
all the problem of the appraisal. Now, I'm old enough, you are too, to go back to the day when we can actually vet our appraisers.
I was in that, yes.
Right, and we could say, okay, you know something, I know Brandon, he does a good job, he's reliable, he's going to be my appraiser.
Yep.
You know, they changed that in 2009 or 2010?
2009 is when it happened. The shift of the appraisal management company came in, and where they regulate the appraisal process between the lender and the appraiser.
So they put a big wall up there so the lenders can't collude, supposedly, with appraisers.
Exactly.
Now, you can still do an appraisal for anybody you want to.
Yes, yeah, independent. It could be an estate purpose. It could be just to find the value of a home. I do a lot of that because people want to know maybe what they're going to be listing their home for. And the best way to get that realistically is from an appraiser, because they are going to give you the value based off of how they see it and hit those guidelines that lenders need, right? So they're satisfying the underwriting process by doing the appraisal, really.
So when I talk to a realtor, they're going to, you know, when I should go back up. When I, leading a lending team, there's two different values for a property, right? So we look at the value of what is a property going to appraise at for refinance purposes.
Yes.
And then when I go and talk to a real estate agent, you know, and the refinance, we're looking backwards, right? What has the market done going backwards? But a real estate agent is looking forward.
Yes, as a prospective approach versus a retrospective approach.
There
right?
you go. Those are great words.
Yeah.
I'm just a simple guy.
Yeah, no, but that's how you break it down. Really, is and this is where we're in a market right now, right? We just went over all that information, is how the low inventory, and so how long are things sitting on the market for, and what needs to satisfy, again, the lender's guidelines, which typically in an appraisal is going to be 3 closed sales and active/pending. So a minimum of 3 closed. And then ideally you want to get those actives and pendings in there, because that kind of negates or navigates as to where the value of the home is, they're headed, the market trends are heading, right? That's what those pendings and active do. And
do you look for outliers when you're looking at pending?
Good question. I do my best to look at all of it, because if I see something that's an outlier, you got to analyze it a little bit to see why. And if it relates, and maybe it starts out as an outlier, but then it turns out to be the most similar to your subject, right? So then you now have to look at the other ones, and it all comes down to providing information and how you articulate that in your appraisal to make it legible and readable to the reader, which is the underwriter again.
So I want to throw this at you and see what your
let's do it
perspective would be. So we have had Simon Polito on our broadcast many times. I don't know if you know Simon at all. So Simon does a non-distressed luxury auction, and he'll list property. He'll put the property and recommend. So say you've got a property that's got a value of $1.5 million.
Mm-hmm.
He said opening bids to start at $1.2 million.
Yeah.
And that, so they know that the property is worth $1.5 million, but they're doing this to create that excitement around the property.
Yeah, to potentially go over $1.5 million, right?
Right,
Yeah,
exactly. Now, if that's a listed property, when you're going out to do an appraisal and you see that $1.2 million,
mm-hmm.
Are you going to call that an outlier?
As a listing, not as a closed?
As a listing.
As a listing, again, I will do my research on it, and it would be considered outline, because I would say auction, or it would say some form as a non-standard, typical, and we try to find the most on-market standard appraisals. Like, we don't want to compare a short-sale property to a transitional conventional if we don't have to, unless it's a short sale market, which was again 2010, really, right?
We
were just, all my comps were short sales or foreclosures. There was no other way to do it.
So you're looking at what the market's
trends are. Exactly. And again, every lender specifically wants, every guideline wants, ideally, USPAP, Freddie and Fannie is, you want your sales as soon yesterday. I want a closed sale with a document that it closed yesterday, because I need that. But that's not how it works, right? They take a couple weeks to record. So it's something that could say closed, but you pull it up, it's still saying not registering as closed. That's where you just got to give information, because it is irrelevant, but you got to do a little digging. And what I'm finding out is, some people don't want to dig that deep, but sometimes you have to for your client, because in these specific situations, that it will determine if the value and the loan goes through or not, just by how you analyze it and how you put it out there on the paper. Because if my goal is, you do the appraisal, you do the inspection, and I don't ever have to see that appraisal again.
There you go.
I don't want to see it again. If I don't see it again, I did my job, and someone's happier along the way, whether it's the lender, the seller, the buyer, whoever it is. But that's the goal. But when they come back to you, that's a different story, because that becomes the rebuttal process, if you will. And you mentioned how you deal with that on your end, and we can maybe talk about that as well.
We're going to do that when we come back. Chatting this morning, Brandon Hargreaves is with us. He's an investor and a real estate appraiser. Been doing the real estate appraising for longer than he's probably going to admit to, but a long time. But before the break, we were chatting a little bit about there's a built-in, I don't know if I want to say a battle, but there's every lender and every realtor wants the properties to appraise at the highest possible value. Underwriters have a different issue. So what is the job of an underwriter? An underwriter's job is to make sure that the loan it meets every one of the guidelines for the program that it is, that if you're dealing with a non-portfolio product, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, USDA, that the loan is sellable and defendable. It's got to be both. So once they sell it, they don't want it coming back. Brandon made a comment before. He doesn't want to see his appraisals ever again, right? So the bottom line is the underwriter wants to make sure that the loan can be bought off of the company's, what they call warehouse line. And that once that happens, no one's challenging it, saying you missed something, you did this wrong, you applied a bad guideline, there's something fraudulent, and none of those things happen. With appraisals, I think you're probably wanting the same thing, that the appraisal is done in such a way that no one's going to challenge that.
Typically, yes, they do. They try, but right. Yeah, you don't that's their profession, that's their job. It's like, unless you go get your car fixed somewhere and your oil changed, but then you get it home and it's still leaking, well, then you would challenge that, because why is it still leaking when you said you fixed it, right? So we're trying to provide a solution for their value by giving them the information. Again, it goes back to, like you said, the underwriting. And so our guidelines are set up basically on so if you're dealing with, say, 5 different lenders, right? You're let's use appraisal management companies, for instance. They're going to set their standards of what they need in their appraisals from appraisers at the highest standard of that lender, whichever that 5 lenders are, right? So so then it covers all the tracks. So the highest one with the most
overlays, or the
most overlays,
stringent,
is kind of how they now implement their guidelines to the appraisers of what they need, because then it satisfies it going back into their portal and having to go through their QC process again and having to go back into the system. Because again, everybody wants this things done as quick as possible, right? And efficiently as possible.
Quick and accurate.
Exactly. So that's where that comes into play. But again, well, actually, let me step back. What my objective is I want people to give as much information that they can and not be hesitant because they think that they're going to upset someone's boundary. Like, say you're an agent.
When you say I want someone,
like,
are you talking about from the appraisal? Oh, for the agent.
Let's just say we're doing a purchase. I'm going to show up to your property to appraise this property, and you're the agent. Correct? Okay. So you're going to come to the property, and in the past, since the 2009 crash, there's been a lot of hesitation on how to talk to the appraiser from the agent, right? Well, what can I give them? Can I give them my comps?
Benjamin Franklin?
Yeah. Yeah.
No, we're just kidding about that one.
Not me. But that's the idea, is how they aren't sure on what to give the appraiser as far as how much information am I going to give them before they get offended or before I'm overstepping a guideline of what's allowed to be given. And the truth is, we're all real estate professionals. Provide them information that you see relevant, and it's up to the appraiser to decide on if that's relevant in their part of the professional process, right? So I prefer getting as much information from you at the property.
Not from me. I'm a lender. We're not allowed to give it to them.
Well, as an agent, we're using you as an agent today.
Okay.
So you're the agent. You're coming with your cutouts of everything, whatever, all your MLS printouts of everything. It's a lot of information, yes, but they should line up. If you're the expert in your market as the agent, I'm the expert as the appraiser. Ideally, we're trying to come up with, we should all see things pretty similarly if we're doing it correctly, I feel, because the market
What's
is
the normal spread between what one appraiser will value a property at and another appraiser?
Do you want to hear a funny story?
Sure.
Okay.
We love stories.
Okay, so
story time on Ron Siegel Radio.
I did an independent appraisal for a divorce, right?
Okay.
So the client was the lady of the divorce. She was getting an appraisal, and then her ex-husband to be was getting an appraisal. So I appraised the property, and it was in Costa Mesa, and I appraised it, and I came in at a value. And she's buying her husband out, mind you. Okay, so she's motivated.
She wants, Brandon, give me the most conservative pricing you can.
Exactly, and she's the most realistic conservative prices. Okay, so I came in at a value. He came in and brought his appraiser in, and the appraiser was $200,000 over my value.
Wow.
In Costa Mesa, California, and the house was about 1,100 square feet. I appraised it, and this is how crazy the market is, at 1.55.
For 1,100 square feet?
1,100 square feet.
Okay.
And he appraised it at 1.79, something 200 grand over. I don't even remember, almost 1.8 or something like that. So, of course, I looked at his appraisal. And, the appraiser, he just wasn't on his game. And there was a reason. You can tell what he was trying to stretch for. He was using Newport comparables on the other side of 16th Street. So he wasn't doing his job correctly. So they had to get a third appraisal. And that appraisal came in at around 1.5 or 1.56, about 10 to 20 grand difference of mine. So, yes, we do run into it often. But then two versus his, and obviously this guy wants the most value out of the house, so then his ex can buy him out of it.
Sure.
But the timing I did that was really good, because again, 3 months later, the market's been so volatile. A model match sold for like 1.7. But again, this was a prospective or retrospective. I mean, I had to backdate it 6 months from when they submitted their divorce paperwork. So it was already going off of that market time. It wasn't.
You're talking about 9 month difference.
9 month difference. But yeah, then one outlier comp for some reason that I didn't have to deal with, because I'm done with it, never came back to me. But she told me, because we talked about it, is that went up to like 1.7. So the market is volatile. But again, it's based off of that date of inspection, not a date in 2 days.
I'm going to share something with our audience that Brandon knows, but a lot of people don't. The form that is used for a divorce is not the same form that's used for a Fannie and Freddie appraisal. And if you're dealing with somebody that does not know that, your attorney can have a field day with that one. So just be aware who you use and make sure that they understand what they're doing the appraisal for. Does have a big difference in the outcome. Don't want to have you have a problem with that. So just be aware of that.
Then you're doing your expert testimony at, which is always fun, but I that's not my niche as much. I'd rather get out there, be in the field instead of being in a courthouse.
You don't want to be in the courtroom with the suit and all that kind of stuff.
You know what I found, that I get very passionate about things. So you have to be really regulated on how you deal, because that was a situation where I was dealing with a difference of value between two appraisers' opinion. And this appraiser that I was up against, again, it was like a third lien on a property for a hard money, and they were trying to satisfy everybody for a foreclosure or something. But yeah, actually the judge he favored the other appraisers based off of just price per square foot. He didn't go off of any facts about it being on a busy street, having a view, having a pool. He just strictly was like, well, we're just going to go off price per square foot, which, that's a whole nother story for appraisers.
Well, something that's not a bad thing though, because if you're looking at, you were at 1.5 and the other one was at 1.55 and they're at 1.56, there's not a whole lot of difference in there. So it's just
no, the $200,000 difference, yes, but not
200,
yeah, that one that she I think just got him out of it, didn't care. She was just so done with that guy. She's like, there's an extra $100,000, just don't come back.
Very interesting. So there's a lot to know about appraising, and now be aware you don't have to use an appraisal management company when you're dealing in divorce and probate and estates and other proprietary issues. When you're dealing with the government sponsored entities and many portfolio lenders, then they're going to want to go through the appraisal management company and have that whole area for defending of loans and whatnot. Continue our conversation. Brandon Hargreaves is with us. Home Built Real Estate Solutions. He's an appraiser. He figures out what properties are worth. And we just get to learn about it here on Ron Siegel Radio and ask the questions. And if you got questions, Brandon will hopefully come back again and we can save some of those questions. Brandon, what is it? How long does it take you to do an appraisal?
Typically when it's ordered, you call the client, you set up the appointment, you go to the inspection. Inspections typically take, again, we're going based off different square footages of homes, right? But an average 30 to 45 minutes. You inspect the property, and again, when you have an appraiser at your property and they're quick, and doesn't mean they don't know what they're doing. It could mean they're really efficient, So when you get your appraisal back, and you're like, well, the appraiser was only here for 15 minutes, and in fairness to that, your condo is 1,200, like 800 square feet.
It's I just looked at one of these last week.
Yeah, I already have the floor plan in my previous appraisal reports from being in this condo project. So there are those cases, but you kind of get a feel for it, because again, when you have an appraiser come to your home and say you're the homeowner, you're letting them into your space, right? So you're letting them into your sacred castle. So there's a part of that to where you kind of you'll get a feel for who they are just by the way they walk around your home and how you feel. And when they do walk through your home, you don't necessarily need to follow them around. Please.
Yeah, they're not there to they're not what do they call it? Scoping your house out?
No, they're license bonded. They're all that good stuff. And
so you're there for, that goes to another question, because last week we were talking to Jeff Clark. He's a home inspector.
Okay.
And he was telling us that there's basically no regulation on home inspectors. They don't have to be licensed. They don't have any of that.
Which is interesting, because they're going inside of a home and you would think there'd be some form of
licensing back. Now, is there licensing for appraisers?
Yes. I mean, yeah, you have to get your licensed, and it's recognized through the state boards. Every state in the United States has a different board within their state for appraisals. Some of the states are reciprocity, meaning I could go work in Arizona. You just fill out some paperwork, which I actually did do. I moved to Arizona after I got my real estate license. So I worked in both states. Well, I didn't work in both. I lived in one, then I moved back. But I had my license for a minute in Arizona as well.
What about the idea now? Are there levels of appraisers, or
yes,
can a guy that's used to doing a $300,000 house in San Bernardino do a $3 million house in Newport Beach?
Well, if they're certified, yes. If they're licensed, it depends on the loan. Licensing only allows you to appraise for a loan amount up to $1 million.
Okay.
But that's again for a lending transaction. I'm licensed, I can appraise a $5 million home if it's non-lending, or I believe if the loan amount is under $1 million. So if anything over $1 million, it requires a certified, and then there's a certified general, which does commercial.
So the guy that does the house is not the same guy that's doing the commercial.
Commercial, I mean, typically commercial appraisers stick to commercial once they get their leveling there. They don't go back and go to it's like a commercial contractor versus a residential contractor. Once
like Mike Trout's not going back to play for the AAA team.
I mean, but you can look at it differently. Maybe you're looking at like a step down, but ideally, sometimes the commercial field and realm that they're in is different to where maybe they like the turn and burn of a residential appraisals. So their flow may be better than having one project that lasts 2 months versus bunch of appraisals that last 2 days or whatever.
Makes a lot of sense.
Typically they will get their report back to your question, they will get their appraisal back typically within 48 hours after inspection is the goal that they always say, the standard goal for appraisal. But again, that takes sometimes longer or less. Right now we're really slow, so I'm sure appraisers are trying to get them in as quick as possible so they can show their clients they're great, so they can get more work. Right, that's kind of how it works. And then when you're really busy, you just say, well, I'm too busy and I'm just going to put you on the, when appraisers are busy and the market, when the rates were low, when the unicorn was hitting, you were doing 10, 15 appraisals a week.
Wow.
Yeah. You're just burning them out. So, and that's where.
So how much home time or office time is there?
There's a lot
as compared to the on-site time.
There's definitely more at home because you're doing all you're analyzing everything, you're writing it, you're prepping it, you're putting your photos in, you're doing your sketch. So but then the drive time could take, the driving, you got to shoot your comparables, you got to drive the property, you got to measure the property. So that's what I like about this job though, is it allows for the freedom of both. So I'm not stuck somewhere too long.
Not stuck in an office all day, but
when you have ADD, it works really well.
That makes sense.
Definitely.
Is technology making it easier or harder, or is there any place in technology?
I mean, yes. Okay, having a Tesla when you're doing this, having a car that navigates basically where you need to go for your driving is definitely added. And you can do all your, you can do a lot in your car now that you couldn't do before. So
you've got one of those automated driving cars so that you do the work while the car drives.
No, I'm an appraiser. I just drive my girlfriend. She's got the Tesla.
Oh, okay. I would say you must be doing really good to have a Tesla.
Well, I'm going to be when we get this investment stuff going. That's where I'm headed, right?
There you go. So that's a whole different world. So the appraisal world. So it's usually, so you can figure, depending upon how busy you are.
Yeah.
About a week, give or take.
Again, and then we can kind of touch on that real quickly as far as how to help the process move smoother for you guys. We kind of touched on it briefly about the rebuttal, if you will. So if we get an appraisal that comes in lower than you expect, there's a form that, say, the lender would provide, which is a rebuttal form to the appraiser to try to dispute their value, right? And that happens because, hey, you're 20 grand low. Let's figure out why. But a better way to solve that, and even than not having to go through the rebuttal process, is to actually, again, go back to being comfortable to provide as much of your information as you have to that appraiser. Because for me personally, when I get all the information and say the agent shows up to the property that I'm going to be doing the purchase appraisal for, they show up, they show me, they hand me stuff. It shows to me that, hey, they're on their game too. They're watching me now. So now I got to make sure everything on this report at least is aware of what's in the packaging they're giving me.
So I want to throw this because we've got less than a minute left.
Yeah.
So you get a purchase contract. On a refi, you don't get anything, right?
On a refi, you don't get
values.
No.
Purchase contract comes with the purchase when you're doing a purchase appraisal.
Yep, you get the purchase contract with backup offers, whatever it is that leads to that agreed upon value between the buyer and seller.
Now you come in and if you see you're looking at a purchase agreement that's $975,000, and your numbers come out and it says, it looks to me like $970.
I've had it.
Are you going to report it as 970? Or are you going to say, okay, well, something?
Here's the deal.
That's
I've had to do both. And again, it's based again. I mean, if I'm even stretching for that 970, then it's going to be harder for me to hit it. Again, we're good. These are our opinions as well, based off of the experience we know.
That's what I'm saying. If you've got an opinion in your 5,000 difference in a $1 million property.
I know we have to go, but let me just touch real quick on why I feel this way, because I came with the mindset, I'm doing a service to this buyer of this property because I appraise it for what it's worth, which is 10 grand below the purchase price. But what I didn't realize until I started talking to agents and having conversations with lenders and agents is that could potentially kill the deal. So instead of me thinking I'm saving somebody or something, I potentially could have killed a whole deal for everyone, not me personally, but the market value I gave could potentially kill the deal. So I like the information everybody gives me because it allows me to give more information to that underwriter as to why I am doing what I'm doing.
So do you include like the backup offers?
I don't include them, but I will acknowledge that they're in there. And if it's something I need to, I'll include anything if I need to get the value. You know what I mean? If you want me to say your kitchen sink's, gold, and I mean, can I put $1 on it? No, but I can say that it's nice. So then now it gives me the value up of the home's condition.
Gotcha. Great information. If you want more information on this, or if you want to meet any of our guests, if you want to chat with Brandon, give me a call, 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990. I know where to find him, and I can put you in touch.